Thank you, Chris, and I guess I would say fellow Rotarians, but I'm not a Rotarian, so Rotarians.
We can fix that.
And it's nice to see a lot of familiar faces. I see we got the town of Leonardtown, we've got the library, we've got fellow county employees. Chris Perlick's another one of those volunteers. There are volunteers and there are also volunteers. When you have wives that are active in the community, you become volunteers more often than not. It's a nice job because it's more behind the scenes, and I kind of like doing that. This is our, hey, you jumped ahead on me. That's okay. We have about 28 slides today, so that's about 2 slides per minute. It's a pretty aggressive, especially for me, it's a pretty aggressive timeline. I will do my best to skip as many as possible so we stay within that allocated time frame. I think last time I was here was 2009, and I think I went almost 20 minutes over the allocated time. And if you were here then, I think you'll remember that. But I did stop at 8:30 and say, if anyone wants to stay, you know, they can. And most people are nice enough to stay, but I'll try not to do that today. Anyway, as Chris alluded to, this is the Department of Public Works and Transportation. We're comprised of several different components: highways, transportation, engineering services, construction and inspections, recycling and solid waste, and building services. What I really wanted to focus on today is this little guy here. I brought a little pointer, which might help. This little guy here, that's what I call the other duties as assigned. It's always a nice little thing, but of all the things that we do, this is something that we do on the side, and actually it has enough merit to it. I don't know if anyone heard the radio chapel earlier this week, which I'll talk about later. What's going on at the airport? Is there anything really happening at the airport? We're the third largest department funded by the county. The first one is the Board of Ed. The second one is the Office of the Sheriff, and Public Works is third. That was the case when Barbara Thompson was Commissioner President. It's still the case today, and I don't see that order ever changing anytime in the near future. So when we talk about airport operations, there are several things that I wanted to talk about and highlight as we go through. This is just our mission statement. We have a lot of single and twin engine aircraft. They are tied down not only in hangars, but also on the tarmac out at the airfield. Our local Leonardtown World War II hero is appropriate because this is the Leonardtown Rotary. I will talk a little bit more about him. That's Captain Walter F. Duke. We have an elementary school, a new elementary school named after him, and actually the terminal at the airfield is also named after Captain Duke. That actually is a presidential helicopter. It does come to our airport every now and then. The last time it came here was with Al Gore on board, and I just happened to be there when it landed at the airfield. We've got flight schools. The lessons are conducted there. You can get your certification as a pilot, and it's Navy Annapolis Flight Center is one of our newest tenants down at the airport. We actually have experimental aircraft. This is one of those aircrafts that is an observation balloon. If you look on the bottom left-hand corner of that balloon, there's actually 2 individuals sitting in the bottom of that. It was a huge balloon. And I remember back when this flew over our airfield, there were a lot of sightings of UFOs. And it became a big buzz. This was 10, 12 years ago. It was very comical, at least in my opinion. A lot of recreational flying. This airport started many, many years ago. Back in '69 is really when we purchased the first piece of property. It's been a recreational and general aviation airport for many, many, many years. That's sort of changing as we further expand the airfield. Every year we do fire and rescue drills. They're full-scale emergency exercises. We get the Public Safety Division, our volunteer fire and rescue squads, our Civil Air Patrol that's also housed at the airport, and Pax River NAS. We actually have planes that are lit on fire, and we do a full-scale emergency exercise. It's pretty interesting. The young Eagles get out there. They do mock makeup with different types of injuries. We have to do triage. We use the terminal. We use the parking area. It's a very neat event. Very neat event. Many, many different tours we conduct at the airport. That happens to be a mom's club. We do Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies. I know they have several of the names now, from the smallest to the largest. A lot more than they used to have when I was there. I think they're Bluebells. There's a high school sail program. A lot of tours get conducted at our airport each year. We are proud to have the Maryland State Police medevac in the Tri-County area. This was a big coup that we actually have this aircraft at our airfield. They now have a new, larger and bigger medevac, Trooper 7. It conducts over 70 search and rescue missions every year and over 250 different medevac operations per year. It's something that you aren't necessarily proud of. The more of those you do, the worse the situations are out there. But we're so glad to have this particular aircraft at our facility. I also have the privilege during major hurricanes in St. Mary's County actually gets hit hard to be able to ride on Trooper 7 and go around and do post-storm damage assessment so we can put our resources where they really need to be. Sometimes it's along the coast, sometimes it's in the interior. It's real fun to be able to go up in that helicopter. And also on the bottom right, that's the medevac. Medevac you see landing in and out. It's the little yellow and blue helicopter that you see. It actually also is housed at our airport. It primarily makes trips between Washington Hospital, Georgetown Children's Hospital, and I think National Medical Center. It does medical transports. So we have some pretty neat tenants at our airfield. And of course, our newest tenant, we'll talk about a little bit later, the unmanned aircraft systems, the little UASs that are just now starting. We're doing research and development at the airfield as we speak. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit more about Captain Duke, but I don't want to talk about it too long because I have some limited time. As I said earlier, we have a terminal named after Captain Walter F. Duke in elementary school. This is a picture of him when he was a youth, when he was flying in World War II. If you don't know the story about him, I think you read in the paper about a year and a half ago, they did find his aircraft in the jungles of Burma where he was shot down. They, of course, can't verify that it was him, but of course they're going to because it is his aircraft. He's probably the only one strapped in at the time the plane went down because it's a single-seater. But he's going to have his remains returned back to St. Mary's where he can have a proper burial. At one time, he was the leading ace in the entire 10th Air Force, which is remarkable. A couple of really fast facts. The way he died, he was going back because there was a wingman that was lost. He went back to look for him. He was jumped by 10 or 12 Oscars, they're Japanese aircraft. He allegedly shot down 3 or 4 of those before he himself was shot down, so very, very gallant effort. He won many, many, many distinguishing awards, starting from the Silver Cross, the Silver Flying Cross, both clusters. An amazing man. But the interesting thing that I find interesting is that our aircraft, or our airport has a designation on each end of the runway. There's a 2-9 end and a 1-1 end, and they're actually painted on the runway. That stands for 110 degrees and 290 degrees. Sounds boring right now, but the interesting fact is Captain Duke's last mission was 110 degrees out, 290 degrees return. That was his mission. So it's just fortuitous that somehow they have the exact same definition. So it was only appropriate. At one point in time, we actually named the airport after Captain Walter F. Duke. It created a really big stir with the FAA and the flying community because it's too confusing. So we rededicated the terminal building in his name and returned the airport to its original name. We thought it was a good gesture, and apparently we jumped the gun a little bit with the airport. Several special events, the main one being the EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association. They have a Young Eagles rally every year. It's usually in the month of June. They have several other events. That's the Mom and Pops Club we talked about. We do many medevac tours. And again, the observation balloon testing that gets done, presidential helicopter that we talked about. You'll see these fast facts every now and then. The idea of those is if you walk away with 1 or 2 of those fast facts in your head, then the presentation's been a success. That's the way I look at it. This particular fast fact, our Experimental Aircraft Association, once a year they fly ages 8 through 17 youth at no charge. They get volunteer pilots, usually between 12 to 16 pilots with their aircraft. We flew 145 youth. They had their first aircraft ride back in June of last year. It was our new record. Our last record was about 90. It's getting to be more and more popular. The more people realize that they can bring their children, have their children taken care of for about an hour, hour and a half, and actually fly around the airport. It's very, very safe. You do have to sign a waiver. That's the hardest part, sending your little child in a little single-engine, twin-engine aircraft. No accidents yet. This is 2 Whiskey 6, I guess our pet name for the airport that most pilots call our airfield is 2 Whiskey 6. Whiskey, I don't think, has anything to do with any of the history of St. Mary's County. It just so happens that's the name. The upper right-hand corner, you'll see is runway 29. There's a 29 designation here. This is Maryland 235. This is Airport Road, Airport View Drive. Lawrence Hayden Road is over here. We have already extended this about 1,000 feet. We're going to extend this another 1,200 feet. This is the runway 11 end. As you can see, there are no buildings, there are no structures, there's no higher education facility, and this is where the skydivers used to jump before they were relieved of their duty from our airfield. There's a left foot there, isn't it? No. Fast back here, back in 1968, we purchased the initial area of the airport, which is this rectangular area here, and it was under a federal grant. It was about 138 acres. We're almost 200 acres as we speak now. History of the airport in terms of management. I divided this up into 4 pieces so it would go a lot faster. From 69 to 76, the airport was actually operated under a lease. We paid somebody else to run the airport. That's when it was really small and it looked like the prior slide. There wasn't a lot going on at the airport. The next period of time, between 77 and 1996, there was an actual airport commission who ran the airport. It was a separate commission selected by the commissioners, manned by volunteers. In 1996, there was an Office of Central Services that was created to help run the airport. They had 3 people. They had a budget of $145,000. It wasn't soon thereafter then where the Airport Commission was relieved of their commission duties and relegated to an advisory role. That got some of those folks excited and a lot of folks left. On about the same time, the prior Office of Central Services was dissolved through a reorganization, and those 3 people and that $145,000 turned into the other duties as assigned with an $18,000 budget. Have fun with that one. And then the last little bit is just taking care of business. We update plans, we standardize leases, we do operating agreements. There's a lot of things that we do here. But those are the 4 big pieces. Just wanted you all to realize we used to lease it out, then we had a commission, then we had an advisory group with a bunch of folks, and then we had other duties as assigned. There is an airport master plan. Some people wonder what the heck's going on out there. There is a master plan. The key about the master plan is it's approved by the FAA. There's a big public hearing process. The Maryland Aviation Administration weighs in as well. It includes all the real property that we have to buy. It has full build out. It also has the sequencing and the timing of not only the improvements but the funding. We have overlaid this runway and extended it in this direction. We have overlaid this taxiway and extended it in this direction. We are in the process, if you haven't noticed, in front of the Southern Maryland Higher Ed, relocating Airport Road towards the Southern Maryland Higher Ed. When the airport was built, there was a 209-foot separation between the runway center line and the taxiway center line. In order to do what we want to do, it has to be 240. It's just the way it is.
Is that why they're clearing the trees on the right-hand side there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've got to make room for the road to move over, so we can make room for the taxiway. Now, when we do this piece of taxiway right here will be offset from the rest of the taxiway and runway, because with the FAA, you have to do this in phases. You can't do it all at once. So the next phase, we're going to relocate this section of taxiway and extend the taxiway and also extend the runway another 1,200 feet.
George, are you doing that so you can have instrument controlled landings?
One reason, the primary reason, is to get larger aircraft in here, which we'll talk about. Corporate type aircraft, 19-seaters. Okay. Commuter air service, I'll talk about it for about 2 minutes, a little bit later.
How long is the longest runway now?
I'll get to that. I haven't missed anything. I'm already 10 minutes into the 15th. So we do protect our airspace. One of the things that a lot of airports don't do, including large airports that aren't just general aviation airports, you've heard about protecting your airspace. You've got the ACUs that the base has. We have airport environs. We actually have in the zoning ordinance ways to protect our airspace. We also have towers. You can imagine if this is my landing approach and a tower is here, I have to come in higher and steeper, which makes it noisier. So we have done a really good job making sure when cell towers and communication towers are put up, pilots don't have to do that. Fast facts, these are the things I like. There are about 36,200 to 42,100 aircraft landings and takeoffs per year. That logo in the upper left-hand corner came out of a design contest that we did. Actually got it trademarked, and it's trademarked through August 2021. There are 174 fixed-base tenants. That number fluctuates, plus a bunch of tie-downs. Fixed-base tenants just means we park our aircraft here, we leave and we go have fun, and we come back and we park it here again. It means it's fixed, it's your home base. There are about 500 to 1,000 visitors. Transients are strictly that, transients. They come in and they go, they don't often stay. We talked about the Maryland State Police Medevac and the MedStar. They are rotary wing aircraft, they're basically helicopters. There are other smaller helicopters that operate out of the airport. We've got over 900 rotary wing operations every year. Since the beginning of time, which was 1968, we've had over $13 million in federal and state grants. 23 grants to date. We sell a lot of gas, whether it's Jet A or low lead, over 150,000 gallons a year. And the terminal building. The Chamber of Commerce is in there, the Civil Air Patrol is in there, and the Navy Annapolis Flight Center is in there. The University of Maryland was in there on a temporary basis, but now they have their own hangar, so we were able to accommodate them as well. If anyone heard the T-Bone and Heather fiasco this past week on the radio, did anyone hear any of that? Well, good. I didn't either. My wife berated me this morning about it. The terminal building. We have a terminal building. We don't sell tickets. What's going on with the terminal building? Well, it was a building it was a governor's initiative to provide underserved communities with terminals. We were one of the winners, but the terminal was way ahead of its time. It just was way ahead of its time. We don't have the runway length for commuter air service. That's just the bottom line. However, and it did cost $3.5 million to build, but 80% of it was the state. Federal aviation was mad at the Maryland aviation for doing this, and mad at the governor for doing it, because we didn't need a terminal. It's not a tower, it's a terminal. So we are called an uncontrolled airport. Just because we don't have a tower, uncontrolled is an okay term. As soon as the aircraft gets above the trees, the base controls. You gotta land and take off through permission from the base. They're on the radar. You don't do what you're supposed to do, it'll be an F-18 escorting you back home. It hasn't happened very often, but they do scramble pretty quickly. We have an airport manager's office in the terminal. The parking lots that were built, there's a park and ride facility out there that MTA operates out of. It's really successful. You go over there any day, the whole entire parking lot is full. The front of the terminal on the airfield side is full of tie-downs. They're all full. We're leasing spaces to people. It's not going to waste. We had the University of Maryland in there, an airport magazine in there, a shuttle service in there. You name it. It's being used. Our guys maintain the facility. It's about 15 years old. It's not beyond its useful life. It's a good facility, and it'll last us to the foreseeable future. And you don't need to know about the volunteer black point program. It's sort of tied into Wildwood and the proximity of Wildwood, and where we ask our pilots to kind of take heed of the fact that you're flying over a residential neighborhood. There are a lot of different planes that land at the airfield. Multi-prop planes, which just mean more than one propeller. Ultralights, single-prop engines, Maryland State Police Medevac we talked about. The Fast Fact, which you'll have to wait to hear about. Eurocopter, other aircraft, 900 helicopter operations, 1,000 transients, and over 42,000 operations. Revenue, expense, and history. I figured Chamber of Commerce, this is something that you may want to know. You know, how is the airport doing? So the bottom graph shows some black lines and some green lines. The black ones are the approved operating budget, and the green lines are our revenues. So the one thing I like to point out is, as soon as DPW got the other duties as assigned, which are somewhere around here, I like the fact that the green line is over the black line. That's got to be a plus. And if we look at where we are now, the green line far exceeds the black line. And all that means is we're heading in the right direction in terms of revenue. Up here, it's a simple graph. We break down the revenue into two pieces. We get our revenue from fuel sales, rents, and leases. Three basic components. But I don't want to deceive you with that graph, okay? The operating budget that we get for the airport is different than how much it costs to run the airport. Our airport advisory committee is keen on that, so are we. There are many other costs that are in other divisions and other departments. Our risk management people have the liability insurance. They're over in human resources. Our highways people do weed control and perimeter control. Our recreation and parks contract mows the airport. You gotta keep the airport mowed. And our building services does all the utilities and janitorial work, and we also do the capital repair. So I like to look at the airport from a cost center standpoint, even though it's not an enterprise fund, as a cost center. Because you look at the prior graph, it looks like we're way ahead of the game. Well, actually, we're not. When you look at the actual expenses, you look at this line right here, $100,000. You go back to the prior slide, our expenses are around $100,000. What's the takeaway from this? That we are finally at the point that we turn the corner, and our real expenses, short of debt service, our real expenses are now exceeding our our revenues are now equal to or exceeding our expenses, which is something that most people really aren't aware of. Well, how do we compare to other airports? I've heard our airport is the White Elephant, the Podunk Airport down in St. Mary's County, that little peninsula. Well, I'll tell you something that's a great takeaway from today. Where do we stand? There are 35 general aviation airports in the state of Maryland. Where are we? We're right about there. What does that mean to anybody? Well, if you look at the statistics on this line, and this is again 2014, of the 35 general aviation airports, only 8 airports have more operations per year. Only 8. More importantly, only 5 have more fixed base aircraft than we do. And in 2006, they thought that we'd only have about 116. And we're way ahead of that, the forecast for this airport. This airport has exploded in terms of its size. So where are we with respect to economic impacts? What else is going on at the airport? We're making $100,000 a year. Is that all? I mean, there's a lot of talk about the airport. It's just not a lot. Well, the prior was a 14 study. This is the 15 study. The MEA conducts these economic impact studies once every couple of years. They said we actually have 184 aircraft. Well, if we were number 5 in the prior slide with 150-something aircraft, we're 180. We've moved up. We may be in the top 2 or 3 in the state in terms of number of aircraft in our facilities. I can't endorse, dispel, or refute any of these numbers on here, but when you look at direct, indirect, personal income, business revenues, local purchases, as far as impacts that this airfield has to this jurisdiction, you're in the millions. I mean, I can't vouch for 16 million, 45 million. Let's just say it was 1 million. Doesn't matter. We're in the millions in terms of true economic impact to this county. I think that's a really important takeaway. And where do we go from here? We could do a couple of things. We could just sit back and hold events like cookouts at Raffles. This is actually a real event at one of the other general aviation airports in Maryland. Just as roadkill gets hit in the car, there is roadkill on the airport as well. So some of these folks have roadkill grills. This is an actual event. We don't have a cafe, we don't have concessions, we don't have vending machines yet, we don't have a restaurant. There's always been talk that that's something that's needed at the airport. We've tried expressions of interest. We've tried to get free rent, free building, free space. There's not enough, we're just not big enough yet. When we get there, we'll get there, but we're just not ready for prime time yet. It's just not the right time. Documents, I'm going to go past this. When you're dealing with the federal government, we're going to continue to update our documents. There's just acronyms everywhere, right? You've got EAs, ASPs, AEPs, OAPs. I don't even want to bore you with all those. There's a lot of documentation, even for a small general aviation airport that we have here. We are going to continue to do a lot of things at this airport. One of them is we're going to continue to leverage the state and federal funding that funds 95% of the capital improvements. We'd be foolish to invest 100% of our money in it when 95% is available if we just follow the plan. We're updating our rules and minimum standards now that haven't been updated since 1994. They're probably long overdue. We're building hangars and tie downs as we speak through a partnership with the private sector. We need a full-time airport manager. Not yet. We'll get there, but it's coming soon. We're going to have a dedicated person. We're going to keep accounting for all of our costs, as in that prior slide, not just look at an operating budget and compare it to revenues. We're actually going to look at our real costs. And we're going to keep supporting unmanned aircraft systems, research and development. That was a waste of animation. Capital plans. So where are we going in the future? What do we have planned? What's our plan? You hear that all the time. What are we doing at the airport? We have a $22.6 million plan over the next 5 or 6 years. We're going to construct the required wetland mitigation that's underway. We've constructed 2 out of our 3 sites. We're going to relocate Airport Road. Airport Road is currently underway. Lawrence Hayden Road is going to happen in the next couple of years. We're going to make sure we protect all of our obstructions. Obstructions are an odd thing. Whenever you expand an airfield horizontally in either direction, there are these approach minimums and surfaces that they have, okay? If I have a surface that extends up in this direction and I need an easement from Wisconsin, and I move this way, I'm gonna need some more easement. I move that way again, I'm gonna need some more easement. So there are a lot of things around the airport, the airport that we need to do. You can't just expand. I talked about the runway to taxiway separation from 207 to 240 feet. And the runway, ultimate length, how long is it going to be? How long is it going to be? Okay, this is how long it's going to be, 5,350 feet. And when we do that, we're going to displace some aprons that are out there now. If Barbara's in my way and I move over, I got to get her out of the way. To get her out of the way, she's got some vested interest in this. I need to provide her with additional space. So that's all that means. Tenants, we're going to continue to renegotiate and manage existing leases and tenants. There's a lot going out there. There are also several other private-public partnerships currently underway that I can't really talk about. But those are just the leases with tenants that we have out there right now. It doesn't include every lease with every tie-down customer that we have. There are a lot of customers out there. There are a lot of tenants. They're also providing a lot of services as well. There is a development plan. We're working on this green area right now. This is where the University of Maryland is. It's the terminal building over here, Maryland State Police. The county's blue hangar, which some of you may be familiar with. Here's a picture just taken the other day. This is where our new development is. University of Maryland. At the time I did this was coming soon. This is all cleared. University of Maryland is no longer coming soon. This building is actually sitting here as we speak today. This is an area of future construction. At the time this photo was taken, only one of these particular structures was in. We now have 5 or 6 of them in, and they'll wrap around this area here. Big fast pack, over 50,000 square feet of new hangar space is currently underway. You go in at the airport today, there's a lot of construction going on. Aircraft of the future. 19-seat commuter type aircraft. You'll see these types of aircraft here. Our first UAS flight at St. Mary's Regional Airport was last October, through a partnership with the University of Maryland. See, I got you, Chris. Chris was pointing at his watch. There's a lot to talk about. I can talk about transportation, solid waste, any topic that you want to talk about. Each one of these slides deserves about 15 minutes. Hopefully there were enough fast facts in there. It wasn't too boring that you remembered a couple items. National Aviation Day is August 19th, 2016. It's August 19th every year. We do a little proclamation in front of the commissioners with our Airport Advisory Committee, and that's that. And I know there's got to be one or